Hello, this is the story of how I made about $7,000 on iTalki without teaching lessons and why I stopped. I thought I'd share it as inspiration for anyone who's maybe getting bored of traditional language teaching or is looking for motivation to find different ways to make money from their teaching. For anyone who's not familiar with iTalki, it's a language teaching marketplace platform where teachers can create a profile and take bookings from students. I'm going to start by showing you my iTalki teaching profile, which shows that since 2020, I've made $7,287. As you can see, in recent months, I've not been using it. A tiny bit of this amount was from a few live lessons I taught when people specifically asked me for that, but probably not more than about $300. The rest of it, about $7,000, was from providing another type of service that didn't involve live lessons. I'll explain what that service was and how I came up with the idea. I suppose this all started long before 2020, when I qualified as an English teacher with a CELTA qualification, and then I taught English in a classroom for a year in Spain. After that, I did a master's in digital product development, and for that I did a thesis about digital language learning, and then went on to work in various digital product management jobs. Then years later, I discovered iTalki and thought it might be a good way to earn some extra money on the side doing one-to-one lessons for English learners. So I did a few lessons, and I often specialised in teaching pronunciation because I have a lot of knowledge about that from my degree in linguistics and phonetics. But overall, something I didn't like about doing live lessons was that a lot of time had to go into the preparation for each student to make a bespoke class. And it ended up feeling like unpaid work because they're paying for my time in the lesson, but you're not really charging them for the time that you spend preparing the lesson. So that was one thing I didn't like. I also sometimes don't really like the feeling of being under pressure in a class, the pressure of delivering a good lesson, having enough content to fill the time available, and then wondering if the student is happy with the lesson. So because of that, I wasn't really teaching as many lessons as I could have done, and I ended up closing my teaching account on iTalki. Now, from my day jobs, I had experience of developing apps and websites for language learning, and I had an idea for an online service where somebody write something in English every day, I correct their mistakes and send it back to them. So it's just like a little bit of practice every day and you find out what your mistakes are. Now, this was in 2016, but these days that sounds maybe not that special as a service, but back in 2016, it was very, very valuable because there weren't any online services or chatbots that could do that for you. So I set up this service and told people about it in a Facebook group. Here's the post that I did. There was a lot of interest in it. And to start with, I was manually sending out topics to students and writing replies to them individually on Facebook Messenger. And I made some money from that. And later, with that money, I paid someone to develop a website where I could automatically send students a topic to write about every day. And students could view their texts with all the mistakes clearly corrected. And for the common mistakes, they could click the mistake and see a stock explanation written by me. I designed the website in a way that made it really easy to process texts from a lot of students. So it was a lot of value for the student, but with minimal work required from me. And when I was thinking about where to find more English learners to sell this service to, I thought about iTalki, because there was nothing in their teacher guidelines to say that you have to be teaching live lessons on video. So I presumed that this type of writing feedback would also be fine. as long as people were paying for it through iTalki, of course. So I set up a new teaching account on iTalki and I created a lesson type to offer this service. It was a bit problematic because I regularly had students booking it thinking it was a live lesson, even though the description clearly explained that it wasn't. And then I had to explain after they booked, and it turned out some of them had misunderstood. But it was fine, we just cancelled the lesson. So I started doing this at the start of 2020, and the timing was perfect because it became very popular during the pandemic. It was the perfect activity for people to be doing every day while stuck at home. It was also good because I was able to do it for a cheap price because I'd created this workflow that made it very fast for me to check each text and give the personal feedback. So that meant that students who were looking for low-cost teachers were coming across my profile with the low price and finding the service that I was offering, and they realised that even though it wasn't a live lesson, it was still something that could provide them with a lot of value. So it was quite popular. So I was correcting people's English every day, Monday to Friday, for about 6 years. And to some people that would sound miserable, but I'm a total language nerd, so I loved it. And I found it fascinating to analyse the mistakes that people made, especially depending on what their native language was. Now, this service doesn't exist today in exactly the same form. I stopped doing it about a year ago, and I'll explain why. One of the main reasons was that this type of language correction can now be done by AI almost as well as a human can do it. So after the ChatGPT revolution, there was less demand for it. So yeah, AI stole my job. But it's okay because I investigated how to use AI for language learning in other useful ways, and I built a new app with a co-founder this time, which is a lot like the original service, but so much better in that now people can speak their daily topic instead of just writing it. They can write it if they want to, but I know that speaking practice is so important for language learners. And the new app is available for Spanish as well, not just English. And there are also listening activities as well, where you get to listen to human native speakers chatting naturally, and vocabulary playlists, which are another of my great inventions, which I designed as a new approach for testing yourself on grammar and vocabulary using audio only. There is currently an element of human feedback in the new app. English learners can get daily feedback from me about their pronunciation and how to improve it, but I'm not yet sure how much we're going to develop that aspect. So that's my story. I hope you find it inspiring. I think the main thing to take away from this is to think about how you can turn your teaching into a repeatable and more scalable product that doesn't always require time spent with someone one-to-one. Also, I think it's interesting to think about how existing platforms can be repurposed to be used in new ways that they weren't originally intended for. Now, I make a lot of videos here where I talk about language learning technology, so have a look at those too and subscribe to see what I do in the future. Bye.